All right, so welcome to our safe environment training. The purpose is to ensure that all personnel who have regular contact with minors are committed to providing a safe environment for children and youth, are capable of identifying and preventing abuse of children, and have no personal history of behavior that would be a threat to children. So that's one of the reasons we are all fingerprinted here and have our background checks. Topics to be discussed. A safe environment is safe surroundings and conditions created by a person's behaviors, actions, and levels of awareness. So we are all in charge of creating a safe environment within our classrooms and within the school and everywhere we go. Ways to create a safe environment within parishes, schools, and other entities. So some of this information is going to be first nature or second nature. You guys already know it. But we're going to go through a couple things that are really, really important for you to do in your classroom to keep our students safe and our staff protected. Under number 2 says objects in your classroom. So a few things that are really important in your classroom is medication or vitamins. A lot of us take vitamins, a lot of our students take vitamins and medication, and they all have to be checked in through the office. So no student should have any medication at all. Even if they say it's just vitamins, they should be sent right to the office. And that goes for staff as well. If you guys have any vitamins or medication that you're taking, you are never allowed to do that in front of any students or really anyone. Go to the bathroom and do it, go to the office and do it. As soon as we let students see that, they think it's okay to bring their own medication with them and not check it in through the office. So that's really important. Another thing for objects in your classroom, if you're bringing in a lunch, like I know I do, I bring in a sharp knife to cut my apple or vegetables or anything like that. Knives or anything that could be perceived as a weapon can't be seen by any students at all. Even something like a plastic knife shouldn't be in the view of students at any time. So if you're going to, cut an apple at lunch and you have a sharp knife, go do it somewhere else. Don't have it in your classroom. Keep your lunchbox, for the elementary levels, keep your lunchbox up in a closed cabinet or something like that. B, do not ever be alone with one student. So anywhere you go, you should not be alone with one student. If there's a case where you are tutoring or you're working one-on-one with a student, you should be in the eyes or in view of another adult at all times. So, for instance, I was tutoring yesterday or the day before in my classroom, and I kept the door open so Brandy across the hall could see what I was doing at all times. We didn't go to the corner where she couldn't see in. You have to be seen by an adult at all times. If you're taking students to the bathroom, take them in pairs. It's always better to have even another child there than there is to have no one there. So if you can't be seen by an adult, make sure you have more than one child with you at all times. Leave the door open, be visible to other adults. So we're going to talk about different boundaries. There are material boundaries, physical boundaries, mental boundaries, emotional boundaries, sexual boundaries, and spiritual boundaries. Boundaries is a huge part, or all the different boundaries are a huge part of keeping a safe environment within your classroom. The first boundary is material boundaries, and although this seems like it wouldn't be something that could make your environment unsafe, it plays a huge part in it. So I'll give you a quick example of material boundaries are things that determine whether you give or lend things such as money, car, clothes, books, food, toothbrush. Don't share your toothbrush with your students. Don't share brushes. You don't want to spread lice. In my classroom, all of my students, particularly the girls, want to wear my jewelry. They ask to wear my sunglasses. They ask to wear my keys. And although you would think that's something little that wouldn't really determine what kind of environment you had in your classroom, it does. It can kind of leave students out. Students could think you're playing favorites, and that all leads to an unsafe environment. Because if they feel uncomfortable or that you are idolizing one student. That's never good. So any materials, especially your personal materials, unless you have one to give everyone, don't do it. The next one is physical boundaries pertain to your personal space, privacy, and body. So every morning when our students come in, we greet them with a handshake or hug, which is completely fine, mostly a handshake. If you're giving a hug, it's a one-armed side hug, not a bear hug or picking a child up or anything like that. This should go for all staff and students, in between student to student, staff to student, staff to staff. It's just more appropriate, and it'll protect our school and ourselves and our students. Mental boundaries, oh, before I get to mental boundaries, another thing with physical boundaries, we need to make sure we know how our students are feeling to loud sounds, loud music, noise in the classroom, and then fragrances and smells in the classrooms as well. We have a lot of students with allergic reactions to smells, fragrances. We have a lot of students that cannot work if it's too loud, even if it's just another student tapping on their desk. We need to be really careful when we're teaching to not just keep our environment safe, but make it an environment where our students can work and be successful. Mental boundaries apply to your thoughts, values, and opinions. So when I say the word mental boundaries, we're really trying to focus on not swaying the thoughts or the values or morals of our students in the way we act and the things that we say. We don't want to change their views on specific areas, because that's not what we're here to do. We're here to give them information and to teach them, but politics and things like that should not be brought up, and you shouldn't try to sway your students' view and get them to vote for Trump or Hillary. We need to be really, really mindful of what we're saying around our students. And that includes not what we're saying directly to our students, but when we're having conversations with other staff members, and the students hear everything that you say. Whether you think you're whispering or you're mouthing something to your teacher's aide or something like that, they can hear on the playground, they hear at lunch, they hear everything. They're watching us. We're their role models, and they look up to us, and they're watching our every move. So we need to be really careful with what we say to them and what we say to others in the presence of our students. Emotional boundaries distinguish separating your emotions and responsibility for them for someone else's. So I'm an emotional person. I get really emotional over, situations and things that I hear. And in the workplace, we need to separate our emotions and our responsibility. You could be emotional about your work, but we really need to make sure that there's set boundaries with our emotions and that they're not carrying over into our classrooms. There's more information under that. Does anyone have any questions so far? Yes.
Okay, so back to the physical boundaries. Logan left yesterday and everyone said bye, and I guess Trishan gave him a hug bye. Since they're so little, is that okay or no?
What do we want our policy to be on that?
Well, I would say it is okay because he's little, but I would also say, remember, one-arm hug.
Okay.
In just a positive way, so we've covered our bases.
Yeah, I believe if we started at the younger ages, they'll carry it on through wherever they go, whether they're here or anywhere else. And it'll just protect them in the long run.
I'm just wondering, cafeteria folks, do we have plastic knives out downstairs?
Take it out.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on to sexual boundaries. They protect your comfort level with sexual touch and activity. What, where, when, and with whom. That's pretty self-explanatory. Again, with the touching. So students, I know my students want to do my hair. They want me to do their hair. That really shouldn't be done here. It's not professional, and there shouldn't even be time for it. So make sure that, a good reason, a good way that I remember what good boundaries to have in my classroom are if their parent was sitting, or Kim or Holly was sitting, or even my own parent was sitting and watching everything that happened in my classroom. Every single person should be okay with what's happening and proud that you're representing our school, and a staff member, a daughter, a teacher. So if you keep that in the back of your head, you're going to be fine. The last one is spiritual boundaries. So we are a Christian school, and we teach our students to love God and that God is here for you. But there's a lot of students that either don't believe or have different beliefs. And we need to be really careful not to force our religion on anybody else. Even if we ourselves have different beliefs, we shouldn't ever force our beliefs on anyone else. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't have plenty of teaching opportunities, but we do need to, once again, separate our emotions from our responsibility as teachers here at Lift and make sure that those boundaries aren't crossed. So before we move on to types of child abuse, does anyone have any questions on boundaries? Any other boundary questions? All right, types of child abuse. So when you hear child abuse, you usually think of sexual abuse, but it also includes physical injury, mental injury, and harmful physical neglect. If you have any questions about that, I do have a web page that describes all of it in detail and all that. So any questions before we move on? All right. Another thing I added is a child is any individual under the year of 18 or the age of 18. So when I say child, you usually think of somebody little, but it's all of our students. Number 5, appropriate responses when faced with the disclosure of actual and suspected abuse or sexual abuse. If you suspect that a crime has been committed or the suspected victim is in danger, you need to call 911 or the law enforcement authorities and report it immediately. So the way we're going to do this is you have to report it on the webpage I'm going to send out. You could pass that out right now. And you need to document everything in RenWeb, and we'll tell you how to do that in just a moment. If a child voluntarily tells you that they're being abused, you need to control your emotions and don't look shocked or disgusted. Listen, reassure the child, and make sure you document every conversation you have that has to deal with that. Remember not to force the child to talk. You should let the child know that you're concerned and that you're available to talk if they need to talk to somebody. Don't ever have the child tell other staff members or prompt them to tell somebody else. Yeah, don't ever do that. Ask the child to disclose abuse separately to different staff members. Keep asking questions because you want to prove child abuse. Touch the child without their permission or prohibit them from going home. Those are the big no-nos of suspected child abuse. Procedures for reporting actual or suspected sexual abuse. Report the suspected abuse to your immediate supervisor or the staff person designated, which would be Mrs. K. Everyone report to Kim if you suspect it, if a child says anything to you. And at other trainings I've done, it's really important to know that even if you think it's just a little sketchy or it just something grasps your attention, report it. Because in most states, if you see something or you hear something that is could be potential child abuse or neglect, you can be just as responsible for the person, the abuser, if you don't say anything about it. So it's better to report it and have nothing happen than to not say anything at all. And that's a huge, huge part of child abuse and neglect in the Child Protection Plan of Florida. You really need to report anything you hear. Even if it's a student that comes up with everything and anything in the world to get attention or to, just throw the class off or to get your attention, you still have to report it just to cover yourself and to cover our school, basically. All right, now everyone has the handout of this webpage, the Florida Department of Children and Family. So the abuse hotline number is on here with the facts and the website to go and report child abuse. And it also gives a description of what the abuse hotline is for, the mission for the department, and there's also a web-based training that we're going to be looking into. So if you guys have any questions on that, I've been through this site a million times. If you ever have any questions, you could just come and ask.
I have a question. If you suspected it, I mean, what would you do? Ask the child to stay after school? I mean, I don't quite understand what all this is going to happen.
So basically what I would do is, if you're just suspecting something, you don't have to immediately call 911. I would first go to Kim and document everything in RenWeb, what the child said to you or what made you have that suspicion, the conversation you have with Kim, and then from there, Kim will probably say, you know, we need to call the police or we need to do this, and we'll move forward. I have, my first year here, I did a project in my religion class with all of my students, and one of our students drew a picture of his dad. They had to, the whole lesson was on fear, and they had to draw something they were afraid of. And one of the students drew his dad with a beer in his hand and said, "I'm a clown, blah, blah, blah." And that's something that you should report. That looks a little sketchy. So we reported it. It ended up he had seen it in a magazine or something else. He had a great relationship with his father. There was no sign of abuse or neglect or anything there. He just thought it would get him an A on the assignment, and there was really nothing there. But if we did not take that paper and report it and follow up, and there was something there, it could have come back on us. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So first to Kim. If it's something that it's not suspected, if a child tells you and there's evidence or proof, find someone to watch your class and go immediately to Kim. Is that right? All right. So the number's on there. Kim's the person to be notified. Let's go to the back page of the outline. For more information, this is another website. This is the Child Protection in Florida. All of the laws that go along with child protection services. If you want to look into what happens after you hand off, if there is child abuse in our school and with one of our students, after it's handled by us, it has steps on there of what will happen to the child, to the family, if you're interested in looking at any of that. And there's always extra information on just all of the laws pertaining to Florida on there. So if you guys are interested, you could go ahead and look up that website. Next, we are going to hand out our employee handbook addendum and go over that. Does anyone else have questions about child abuse or safe environment, creating a safe environment in your classrooms? All right, so we are going to talk about social media and staff and student or family involvement. So if you follow through the addendum, the first bullet point is no staff member at LIFT may friend, like, or follow the social media of any student, parent, or family member of LIFT Academy and or university.
So you stop right now. So if you are friends with any student, parent, or associate of LIFT Academy, you need to unfriend them.
Yeah, so if you are already friends with them on any social media at all, unfriend them, delete them. We would advise everyone to put any of your social media on private. We're not telling you that you have to, we're just advising you to do that. That's what we would do. So, social media includes but is not limited to Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, Kik, any of those social media. Do not post any Lyft students, parents, and or family members to your personal social media. Once again, it includes all social media. All conversations with and around Lyft students must be appropriate. If you hear students having inappropriate conversations, you must tell them to stop, and then document the event through RenWeb. Do not discuss your personal life with or around Lyft students. So this goes back to our boundaries. We don't want to have inappropriate conversations in front of our students, even if it's not with our students, with their parents, and with anyone. You want to make sure that if somebody can see you, they could probably hear you or read your lips, and you don't want to have anything inappropriate to say or to be said about you from anybody else. My grandma always told me when I was growing up that you should believe half of what you see and none of what you hear, because people make up stories all the time, and you could see something way differently than a student sees something, or another staff member, or an adult. The next one, any and all communications must be documented through RenWeb. This includes but is not limited to text, phone calls, and emails. So, perfect example of this is one of my students' parents texted me to request a conference. All I had to do was write it in RenWeb. You actually go...
I have that, and I'll pass that out.
Okay, perfect. She's going to pass out the directions of how you do that.
I'll pass this out.
So you have to document any of that. I just wrote a little paragraph up. So-and-so's mom texted me this morning to schedule a conference. Conference scheduled this regarding that. That was it. Just to cover ourselves again. No staff member at Lyft Academy and or university may drive any student or family member to or from school unless a carpool permission form has been filled out by the family and returned to the principal beforehand. So a lot of us carpool with students, give students a ride. You have to have a form in there or it's not allowed.
I have a form, and I'll pass that out at this afternoon's meeting.
All right. Oh, I missed one. No student member at Lyft Academy or university may babysit any student who is attending Lyft Academy. So that's easy. No babysitting. Tutoring cannot be done during school hours. See principal with any questions. Lyft does not assume any liability for any tutoring at all. Staff tutoring takes their own risk when tutoring Lyft students or any other student. And the last bullet point, oh, not the last on this page, staff who run summer camps and or activities outside of Lyft or Lyft-sponsored event must require to have all families whose students are attending their camp or activity to fill a liability form that holds Lyft harmless and relieves Lyft of any and all accountability of students, staff, and all persons associated with the camp or event. Any contact with students, families, family members, current or previous, after school are not covered by the Lyft policy, procedures, or liability. Staff takes their own risk. Any time out at school, when you're not in your staff hours, you're taking your own risk. Lyft is not accountable for any of that. When hugging students, only use one hand side hug. And students shouldn't be touching any staff member anyway. So I keep mine to a handshake. I know we love hugging at our school. My students love hugging each other. They love hugging me in the morning. And I just use the lice thing as no hugging in my class. That's just what I do for mine. So, any questions?